Michael Brown was nominated by President Bush to a number of Homeland Security positions and twice confirmed by the Senate.
Earlier this evening, I spoke with Mike Brown, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's coordinating disaster relief of a dozen federal agencies and the American Red Cross.
All right, former FEMA Director Michael Brown, thank you so much for joining us.
Michael Brown, former FEMA Director. Thank you, Michael, as always.
This episode of The Michael Brown Show on BCR is brought to you by Weston Distance Learning. Weston Distance Learning is a fully accredited distance learning institution with an A+ rating from the BBB. For over 35 years, they have trained thousands of men and women for rewarding careers. For more information, visit westondistancelearning.com.
And now, The Michael Brown Show on BCR.
Welcome. I want to welcome John Kearney from Intrado to this episode of The Michael Brown Show on BravoCharlieReady.com. John, thanks for coming, for driving all the way down from Boulder to our studio today. Glad to have you with me.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. It's good to be here. And thank you to your listeners and audience for listening to us and our message today.
Well, good. So tell me what you're a senior VP at Intrado.
I am.
Tell me what your title is and what you do at Intrado.
Yeah, so I've been with Intrado for about 15 years, and I have responsibility for one of our lines of business called carrier services. And essentially what we do is support service providers, wireless communication companies, telephone companies with their obligations for 911.
Okay.
So we ensure that they're in compliance with the federal and state regulations to make sure that 911 works. So I like to say to neighbors and friends, we're the plumbing of 911. We're behind the scenes.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, we make sure that everything is working on behalf of our customers, the service providers,
Right.
and public safety as well. So it's a fantastic team of people. We've been around for over 30 years and
Right.
are considered the leaders in public safety,
Yeah.
but probably a company that many haven't heard of.
Well, and so let's talk about just Intrado itself for a second, because I can, as I told you earlier, I remember going to visit Intrado very shortly after 9/11
Yes.
to look at how the new facility up in Longmont, how it was secured, and you had redundancy, and you had backups for power and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we were actually studying what you guys were doing, because you were, at that time, state-of-the-art. And I'm sure you've gotten even more state-of-the-art as we've progressed. But when it comes to Intrado and 911, are you guys like 50% of the backbone of 911? Are you, where do you rate in that?
You know, we certainly don't get into specifics for obvious reasons,
Sure, right.
but we do touch a majority of transactions, whether it be calls or whether it be data that's behind the calls, validating the address data that
Right.
might be associated
Right.
with your home address. So if you were to call that, we're ensuring that the routing and accuracy of the data is there. So we play a very large role in today's, at least in this country, in the ecosystem of emergency response.
So when someone makes a call into a 911 call center,
Right.
you're really the back office. You're really the backbone of that call.
Yeah, we're touching a few parts of that call. If you can think about, as you just said, 80% of calls to 911 today are originating from a wireless phone.
Right.
So think about your cell phone.
Sure.
And you've seen an accident or what have you. You're calling 911. Your service provider, your cellular service provider, is working with us behind the scenes to make sure that call is first going to the right place. It's going to one of roughly 6,000 public safety answering points.
Wow.
And those are the local, county, state, city jurisdictions that take 911 calls and then dispatch them. So we're both on the front end there to make sure it's going with the right information, location, address, what have you. And then on the back end, we're providing the technology for those public safety answering points, I'll call them PSAPs,
Right.
to actually manage the call, take the call in, and then work through their computer-aided dispatch. So we touch various segments of that continuum, if you will.
That's fascinating. I mean, I just find that
great.
fascinating.
Yeah.
So the reason I wanted to talk to you today
Yes.
is I understand that you're working on a project, and I know very little. Here's all I know about it. All I know about it is that you are doing some sort of text messaging process
Yeah.
where if I'm in an awkward situation,
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to send a 911 text message.
Mhm.
Tell me about that.
Mhm. Good. Well, thank you again. And let me set out the problem first, and we can talk about
Sure.
some of the background and then our solution to the problem. But we see that not enough public safety answering points, cities, counties, what have you, have adopted the text to 911 solution. And let me just step back and say that in parts of the country, you can actually text to 911, just as though you were calling 911. So you use the 911 code,
Okay.
and you will be connected if they have adopted that technology within that city, for example.
Let me interrupt for 1 second.
Yeah.
A silly question, probably.
No,
Do I have to text star 911, or
No.
can I just 911?
just to 911.
Okay.
And you will initiate a conversation if that city has adopted the technology within their call taking facility. You will initiate a text conversation just as though you were talking to
Okay.
a 911
Okay.
call taker. They'll ask you the similar questions of your location and the nature of your emergency, and start to initiate first response for your situation. So what's come to light, Michael, through the course of the last couple of months and the situation of the pandemic, is that we see reports of significant, dramatic increases in domestic abuse.
Sure.
And the logic of that holds some water.
Right.
Confined space,
Mm-hmm.
limited mobility, around away from the
Right.
residence.
Right.
Maybe it's economic reasons that a person feels like they have to stay with their spouse
Right.
because they've lost their jobs, or fear for the kids, or what have you.
Sure.
So, you put reporting is mixed, but you certainly put some logic to that, and see where that could be the case. So, we've decided that seeing an adoption rate over 7 years or so of about 40 or 45% of those 6,000 public safety answering points have the technology to natively accept that text message. We don't believe that's good enough. What about the rest?
Sure.
Especially in this situation. So, we believe that it's our responsibility to leverage our technology and resources to help create a solution that closes that gap.
Right.
Just to give you some background, so essentially what we are proposing is an interim solution for those public safety answering points who have not yet adopted the text to 911 solution, that we act as a relay center, essentially,
Okay.
using an existing team that we have here in Colorado,
Oh, okay.
to help create a relay for those text messages. Today, if I were to initiate a text and I happen to live in a city that has not adopted this solution, I essentially get a bounce back text. It's a message responding back to me saying, text to 911 is not available in this jurisdiction. Try calling, please contact 911 through another means.
Right.
Not the best of
Sure,
solutions,
right,
obviously, if
right.
you're in that situation where you need to contact, and maybe a voice call is not possible or ideal. Yeah. Particularly, again, domestic abuse.
Right.
This episode of The Michael Brown Show on BCR is brought to you by PS Tracks, the leading system for operations, checks, and logistics management. Visit www.pstracks.com today.
Let's step back a little and give some background on text to 911. Intrado was the first to offer a proof of concept in 2009, just to give you a sense of the timeline here.
Right.
It's been around for a while.
Yeah.
The Federal Communications Commission passed an order in 2014 requiring that wireless service providers, cell phone providers, support the ability for you and I to initiate a text. Just as I was talking earlier, text to 911 to be able to be delivered to your local city. The big trigger, the big condition of that order was that the public safety answering point had to have the means, the technology, and the capability to receive that text. There are some technological things that have to be done, and there's a cost, obviously. And so that's the real trigger. The PSAP has to say, I'm ready, I have the technology, I have the means, I have the training, and they launch the process of requiring the carrier to then deploy and work with us to enable that technology. So for various reasons, I said earlier that about 3,500 or so of the 6,000 public safety answering points have adopted the technology, which is fantastic.
Sure.
But for various reasons, whether it be funding, resource constraints, some, originally feared that there would be a deluge of text messages coming in, maybe not all appropriate for 911 or emergency response. None of that has really played out in the 7 years or so that the order has been in place.
But don't you think that was probably also true even with the advent initially of 911? I mean, they still get the calls of somebody griping about, I can't get French fries at McDonald's.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. What's the oven temperature for cooking my turkey on Thanksgiving, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right, and that's going to happen. But as it's turned out in the last 6 years or so, the volume of text messages has been a very small percentage relative to total calls to 911. So it's somewhat of a niche application, if you will. But again, there are those cases where maybe it's an abduction, maybe it's a domestic abuse case, or there's some situation where the person is fearful for their life or safety in terms of using a voice communication. I mean, those can be sometimes long conversations with a call taker.
Yeah.
So what we are proposing is to act as an intermediary for those public safety answering points that want us to do it at no cost. We are offering to act as a relay. And what that essentially means, Michael, is that inbound text will come, and instead of initiating that bounce back I talked about earlier, we will actually route that text to a team of 911 call takers that we employ today. And so trained 911 call takers take calls each and every day, initiate the conversation with the end user, and then also we will know where that person is calling from and know where they need to be connected to. So I live in Boulder, Colorado. If we need to connect to the city of Boulder, we will do that on a voice relay on the back end, and essentially connect the two parties with us in the middle. It's not, it's not the direct solution where I'm talking directly to public safety, but as an interim, as a temporary solution until those public safety agencies upgrade their technology.
And these are my words, not yours.
Yes.
My words would be, that's also a great way to kind of teach these PSAPs, these public safety access points, the advantage of adopting a system like this. So I think you're doing a great job of kind of leading the horse to the trough and showing him, hey, there's water here to drink if you would take it.
I think that's a great way of characterizing it.
Yeah.
It really came to light given some of these public reports and the fact that we can do something.
Yeah.
We have the means, and we certainly want to be a part of that solution. So, we hope it's to your point, introduces the technology to folks, and as funding comes available or as they make the move to a next generation 911 capability, they're adopting the appropriate solution.
Sure.
So we are in talks with some initial states where adoption of text to 911 has been lower than we'd like to see, and we've trialed the technology just to make sure that all the technical things work, and it does. So we're going to be reaching out at state levels where we can and local levels, just making sure that folks within these city and county jurisdictions understand it's available, and if they'd like us to move forward, we'll do so.
Good. Well, I can tell you that a lot of elected officials, a lot of emergency managers and other public safety officials will hear this conversation, so maybe that will spur them to
we hope so.
to make take some interest in what you're doing. Because I always think about you and I were talking earlier. Your wife's a teacher, my wife's a school counselor, and during this whole stay-at-home kind of stuff, watching her try to counsel children, and then The district attorney in the 18th Judicial District here in Colorado did an editorial where he talked about the number of child abuse reports have dropped by 80%. Well, I don't think anybody believes that child abuse is down 80%. They're just not interfacing with a teacher or a counselor
Right.
that's able to recognize that and get the help.
Yeah.
So, maybe at some point, I mean, kids are so adept at texting now that once they learn about this system, it probably saves some lives.
Exactly. As you said, the millennials and others,
Oh, yeah.
they prefer a non-voice to
Right,
a voice.
right.
My daughter is 21, and getting her through on a voice call is,
That's right.
is impossible.
But Dad can always send a text and
That's
you always
right.
get a response
That's
that
right,
way.
immediate.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important for us to be able to use these technologies, and frankly, text is really now a legacy.
It is.
We're
True.
moving to
Right.
new technologies where we're
Right.
calling, hopefully through our smart speakers or
Right.
other capabilities to contact emergency services, or the incredible devices that we all carry around,
Yeah.
are building in capabilities. So it's really just the beginning, but this is a small place where we can add some value and hopefully, provide some help. And we've, seen some of the content of these text messages that are receiving that bounce back. Folks need help, and they're using this technology
Good.
for a reason.
Good.
But it's not going anywhere.
Right.
So we need to address that. And,
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate your time today.
Of course.
And I just want you to know that as a person who's been involved in emergency management for a long, long time, I have the greatest respect for Intrado and the work that you guys do. It's absolutely fantastic, and I wish more of the world understood what Intrado is really doing in terms of that backbone and making 911 work for us.
Yes, thank you. And at the end of the day, it's people who have a very strong connection to what we call work worth doing, and the fact that even if it's removed a couple of levels, that they're helping save lives. And
Yes.
we have a fantastic group of people that keep driving because of that mission. So
Work worth doing.
yes, yeah.
That is a
It's a great,
fantastic.
It is.
That's perfect.
Many of us, I think, can apply that.
Yeah.
Certainly keeps us going and
Right.
putting the right solutions in place.
Yes.
If anybody wants any more information from
Absolutely.
the listeners, probably the best way is intrado.com,
Okay.
INTRADO, and down on the contact us, we'll get it to the right place if
Perfect.
Folks are interested in learning more about
All right.
our approach here. So
All right.
thank you.
Intrado.com.
Intrado.com.
John, thank you for your time today. It was
Thank
great.
you,
It was
Michael.
great.
I appreciate it.
And I would shake your hand,
Yeah,
but
I know.
we still do that. So
We'll
we'll do a
virtual
fist bump, all
There you
right?
go.
Okay.
Very good. Thank
Hey,
you.
thanks a lot. Thanks for
Take care.
being here.
Bye-bye.
The Blue Cell and The Michael Brown Show on BCR thank the following advertisers and collaborators: